because of the chaotic situation within the Labour government that we have here at the moment, and them losing 1,500 local seats, and the infighting and self-centered, insanity that's going on, Downing Street itself is now full of press and the media, all waiting for an announcement. Will Keir Starmer resign? Will he be thrown out? All of this. So there's no room physically for us to get in there. And that's what the message from the police told me. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going ahead, because a lot of people have said straight away, oh, we've cancelled. No, we have not cancelled. The hand over the petition at the door of 10 Downing Street is, to be realistic, pure theatre. What we do in the background, we email the foreign office, we email the Home Office, we email the Commonwealth, and we email the Lords with the physical written petition that we do, that's been in preparation for nearly a month now. We have to organize these things well in advance. The police can take 4 weeks to approve a petition handover. So that in itself, that's the only thing that's been cancelled. So we will be continuing to meet at 12 o'clock outside the Zimbabwean embassy at 429 The Strand, and we will start our demonstrations there and then. Speeches will be given, and we will no doubt have the embassy shut. They always shut when we turn up, because they're the guilt complex of the people in there. They know the situation. Now, currently, a major part of our petition is covering CAB3. We've already submitted a petition about CAB3 on the 21st of April. We've actually also submitted, I think on the 16th of April, our submissions to Zimbabwe Parliament. There are a lot of things, but basically we said we completely refute the entire CAB3. But since you're after some advice, we offered them a new constitution that is far more draconian in terms of its treatment of things like the Politburo and other captured judiciary and institutions that are prevalent in Zimbabwe that are stopping democracy. There is no democracy at the moment in Zimbabwe, and there never will be until ZANU-PF become some sort of democratic party, which I doubt, but that's another story. So we've already have a big element of data and information about CAB3 and all its disadvantages. We don't see any advantages whatsoever for the citizenry or the economy of Zimbabwe. We see a lot of advantages for the elites within the party, and that's really where it's all stemming from. As a side issue, I did notice, I don't know if it's true or not, that Mnangagwa is trying to become a king and change the constitution, or just dismiss the constitution, which would seem to be his underlying strategy. But that has not been proven at this moment in time. Within the constitution, we've also raised the more interesting aspect, particularly for the diasporans of Zimbabwe, of something called transnational repression, which obviously we've got plenty of examples of that over the last 10 years of the taking of names and the broadcasting of our events within Zimbabwe with critical analysis by people within Zimbabwe. And it's been going on for too long, but I hadn't realized until a few weeks ago that this is considered to be a major problem by Western society. So the Office of Human Rights under the United Nations is not happy with transnational repression, and nor is our UK government now. Since June last year, there was a very wide-ranging paper produced by a joint committee on human rights of Lords and MPs, and that is now being assessed into law in the UK. So I have pointed this out pointedly within the petition, that we have plenty of evidence of transnational repression going on, especially in the UK, because we have a subsidiary of the regime operational here, which is called the UK and Europe, ZANU-PF UK and Europe group, which used to have as chairman back in 2016, Nick Gwangwara, believe it or not. He was the chairman of that group. Now, very pointedly, we've realized that Nick Gwangwara took permissions from the Harare constitution of ZANU-PF to become the publicity officer that he now is. So clearly that unit operating in the UK is a bona fide division of the Harare regime. And I'm a British citizen, and I object to something like that. I strongly object, and I've taken it up with my local MP, that we have an organization like the Iranian organization that should be proscribed in the UK. ZANU-PF UK and Europe should not be here. It is a terrorist organization threatening Zimbabwean citizens and others. I want it gone as a British citizen, and I'm campaigning for that separately. So our petition is 14 pages of argument, research, and coherent reasoning why CAB3 should not be going ahead, and why what a mouthful, transitional repression needs to be properly recognized amongst the diaspora in this country and globally. It is an international situation now. So anyone in America, Europe, or wherever needs to point this out within any asylum they're claiming to gain permission. So that is where we stand at the moment. The fact is, we're not going to be able to go through the gates of 10 Downing Street and knock on the door to 10 Downing Street is the only change. We will be making our stand, as it were, opposite 10 Downing Street on a nice piece of grass outside Downing Street, and we will congregate there at before 2 o'clock, because we meet at the embassy at noon. We will then walk down at about 1:15, 1:20 to outside Zimbabwe, Downing Street, and then at that point we'll make a theatre of sending these emails off to the Foreign Office, the Commonwealth Office, the House of Lords, even 10 Downing Street itself. So the petition will be delivered. What we've written and what we're proposing to write, because I may take more information from this discussion today or now. If there's any more strategic points that come up, I will be glad to put them into our written petition from today's event. So I think that's just about it, apart from I'm trying to relax now with my vodka and orange juice. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, John, and thank you for that opening statement. Thank you. We're learning a lot. We need to know more about this transnational repression. It seems like a topical issue. We do have a number of speakers lined up for this evening's discussion, like my sister Patricia said, but the common theme is about CAB3. So we are very excited that Doug Coulthard is joining us. John was just speaking. We also have Honorable Daniel Molekele, and I have sent you an invite, Honorable, as well as Honorable Hon Hlatywayo. If you can accept the mics, We will give each of the panelists 3 to 5 minutes just to give opening remarks, and then we'll have opportunity to interact with them. Initially, the co-hosts, and then the floor. You can ask questions and make quick comments. So at this moment, I'll give the opportunity to my brother Dakota to go ahead and give your opening remarks. Thank you once again for showing up for Zimbabwe. I know we've been meeting on other platforms, and this is an exciting time for Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, and I agree with you actually that this is an exciting time for Zimbabwe. It's a very dark time as well. And CAB3 represents one of the most dangerous assaults on our fledgling democracy that we have seen. But I also do believe it is an exciting time because I think a renewed level of energy has been injected into the citizenry. And I think regardless what happens with CAB3, we need to carry that momentum through and continue to advance the cause of the democratic struggle in Zimbabwe, regardless what happens. And that's going to be all the more important if CAB3 does go through, because CAB3, if it goes through, will essentially close the door to any electoral transition in Zimbabwe. And this is why we've been pushing this caption of, or this point of it taking away one man, one vote, the liberation, a reversal of the liberation struggle ideal of a one man, one vote. And we need to understand that this goes much deeper than just the abolition of the presidential election and replacement with an indirect election by parliament, because the propagandists will tell you that, other countries around the world have indirect elections for their president. South Africa has that. Zimbabwe is no different, but that's not the case. The point is not that an indirect election is inherently undemocratic. It's that the indirect election that CAB3 creates is inherently undemocratic, because what it does is it strips any pretense of democracy out of our parliament, and it also empowers parliament to elect someone with absolutely no democratic legitimacy whatsoever. Let me explain what I mean by that. So how does CAB3 strip our parliament of any democratic legitimacy? It does this in a number of ways, partly through the changes to our electoral architecture. So what CAB3 does is it takes two core functions of ZEC around the voters' roll and delimitation, and it gives them to two bodies, being the Registrar General and a new commission they wish to create called the Delimitation Commission, which are completely controlled by the president. We need to understand that while people have had issues with ZEC in the past, and rightly so, there are still some legal constraints on the president's power when it comes to appointment of ZEC commissioners, when it comes to removal of ZEC commissioners, and there are also legal safeguards around ZEC's independence, which makes it, which does still maintain some restraining effect on ZEC. What they want to do is unbundle those functions of ZEC and give those functions to completely undemocratic, unaccountable institutions which lack any independence, which are completely controlled by the president. The voters' role, of course, is very key in any election, and it raises fear of manipulation of the voters' roll, as happened during the Mudede era. We need to remember that this is just a reversal back to the 28, the sort of 2008 and before era. And delimitation, if it's controlled by an individual, this is a bit harder to explain, so I've done a much longer video on this. You can check it out on my Twitter or on my YouTube. But essentially, if you have non-independent delimitation or drawing of electoral boundaries, you can have a scenario where 30% of the vote is sufficient in order to obtain a majority in parliament. So that's the first way, is through the changes to our electoral system, and then then there's three other things. One is the changes to the Senate. So the Senate then will have 10 unelected appointed senators. These are complete, these senators have absolutely zero democratic legitimacy. They're just appointed by the president with unfettered power. So this increases the president's control over the Senate, and then they also remove the requirements that traditional leaders ought to be non-partisan, and by removing that requirement, it removes a protection for the 18 chiefs who sit in our Senate, who, although yes, they traditionally vote together with ZANU-PF, they are not meant to, and the fact that they are legally required to be non-partisan provides them with a level of protection if they were to not vote with ZANU-PF. If you remove that protection, they essentially become political functionaries of the president, meaning that before a single vote is cast, the president has 28 out of 90 senators, meaning that the ruling party would only need another 18 senators in order to have a simple majority in the Senate. They can obtain 18 senators with just 30% of the vote. So once again, in the Senate, as in the National Assembly through delimitation, in the Senate, they would retain control of the Senate with just a mere 30% of the vote. Then the last thing is what we call the Jugananda presidency, because CAB3 makes clear that the person who becomes president does not even need to be a member of parliament, and nobody even needs to know who they are. Just a simple majority of a joint sitting of parliament, which is 186 MPs, needs to vote for that person. So someone who has never been put to the electorate, or even someone who was rejected by their own constituents, could become the president via the back door if they simply buy 186 186 MPs a nicer car than the next guy. This opens the door to kleptocracy, rule by thieves, whereby the most corrupt, the most unscrupulous members of our society can literally buy the presidency. And CAB3 even builds in a monitoring and evaluation mechanism for kleptocrats, because CAB3 makes it clear that that vote for the president will not be by secret ballot, or rather it's silent on that issue, but our Constitutional Court has ruled that where it's silent on that issue, you defer to the point that it's not by secret ballot. This is in contrast to, for example, the election of the Speaker of Parliament, where the Constitution explicitly says that the Speaker has to be elected by a secret ballot. So what it means is that the kleptocrat who has bought 186 MPs in order to become president can actually monitor those 186 MPs and make sure that they do what they've been paid to do. So CAB3 literally takes away any citizen influence over the election of the president, which is why we say that it is categorically a reversal of one man, one vote. It is categorically a reversal of that core goal of the liberation struggle. It is a re-entrenchment of essentially a Rhodesian system of governance, of rule by the elite, rule by a tiny minority of citizens for their own benefit, rather than for the benefit of the majority of citizens. And that is just the start of what CAB3 does. There are many other things that it does, but I realize that I've used up my my 5 minutes of my opening remarks. So I will leave it there. But all that to say that that we need to push hard in the next few days to to make sure that people make submissions to Parliament. We need to be engaging our MPs, and I'm so happy to see that we have 2 MPs here on the platform. We need to all be engaging our MPs, and then regardless of what happens with CAB3, we need to be building a mass democratic resistance, because if if CAB3 goes through, that is going to be the only mechanism we have, because the route to transition by an election will be completely closed. Thank you. Those would be my opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you for that comprehensive, summary of what's going on with CAB3 and the implications. We will have a number of questions for you. I'm not sure, John, if you wanted to ask him a question. If so, I would say hold your question until the others have had some opening remarks, then we'll give you the floor. John?
It was just a simple question. Doug, do you see a situation where the presidency will be for sale to anybody anywhere in the world?
That's a good question, John. Maybe Doug, hold the question. So
Sure, I can
we
hold the
have
question.
many more,
I mean,
and just prepare. You'll be the first one to answer that question.
The short answer is yes. I mean, not to anyone in the world, in that you'd still have to be a citizen of Zimbabwe to become president. But there would be, but essentially the presidency would be for sale.
Amen. Presidency for sale. Someone like Wicknell might be our president. I heard that on another platform, and that's a scary proposition. Anyway, we welcome our other panelists today, Honorables Daniel Molekele and Gladys Hlatywayo. Thank you so much for coming to this program. And to everybody, please send more invites to people, retweet, repost, so that more Zimbabweans can join in this conversation. So I'll give this opportunity to Honorable Molekele, your 3 to 5 minutes introductory remarks, followed by Honorable Hlatywayo and then Milton. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who is in this space. Thank you to Change Radio for hosting this space. It's a very important space. And our co-hosts, Sister Patricia and Gwangwara. My name is Daniel Molekele. I'm a member of Parliament representing Hwange Central constituency. But I'm not just a parliamentarian. I'm a former civil society leader. Most of my adult life, I've spent it in South Africa, working mostly with civil society. And I only became a member of Parliament after I was invited to come back home. But I'm also a former student leader at the University of Zimbabwe, having spent most of my time when I was at the law faculty in SRC. So I'm a Secretary General, Vice President, and I'm a former President of the University of Zimbabwe Students' Union. And I'm also a former Vice President of the Zimbabwe National Students' Union. So I've just spent most of my life after I left high school just doing what I can to contribute to this future of this country, to the development of this country, since 1995. Yeah, we are at a crossroad as a country because we are being forced once again to pay dearly. When ZANU-PF goes through a succession process, it takes the whole country down with them. So where we are today is actually where we are coming from. We are just repeating a cycle. In 2016, 2017, the whole country came to a standstill as ZANU-PF failed to come up with a smooth transition. In the end, the decisive factor came through the military. What we are seeing as we speak tonight is yet another process of succession in ZANU-PF, and the whole country is being brought to a standstill once again. This whole constitutional amendment bill number 3 must be taken into the context of the succession battle in ZANU-PF. It is actually the second half. The first half, we saw it in the 9th Parliament with constitutional bill number 2. For constitutional bill number 2 to happen, it was a preparation for this bill number 3. Some of you might not be aware, but we had some dubious recalls under the 9th Parliament, most led by Douglas Monzora and others, where we had what we call the Supreme Court judgment, which was the foundation of where we are today, where the ZANU-PF, I don't want to mention the specific person, but as I speak, you'll be able to pick that when I say ZANU-PF, I don't mean the party, in a faction of the party. because this is a succession battle, so ZANU-PF is divided. But those who wanted to disrupt the succession process in ZANU-PF initiated Constitutional Bill number 2. The key clause in that Bill number 2 is the removal of the running mate clause, which people like the late Professor Alex Magaisa fought so hard for to be under the 2013 Constitution. Why is the clause very important? It is the same clause that was used to manage us beyond the 37 years of Robert Mugabe. The running mate clause changed the way we transitioned from one leader to another as a country. Previously, we would have been forced to have the speaker for 90 days as the acting president, and then would be forced to have elections. But the running mate clause prescribed that in the event that the incumbent president is unable to continue, then the vice president will then take over. So that is the system that is used in the United States of America. You finish off the term of the president. So in 2017, that's what happened in our country. When the military assisted transition or coup happened, we did not have a fresh election to elect a new president. We actually continued between the 5-year term from 2013 to 2018. And by hook or crook, Emmerson Mnangagwa managed to become the president of the country to finish off the 5 years that were supposed to end in 2018. There is a whole Twitter space that can be done around the fact that he had been fired publicly in a press conference 2 weeks earlier, and then there was only one vice president remaining in that country, who was Pegezela Mpogo. So the reality was that he was the only person who was available to continue and finish off that term. And when Robert Mugabe resigned, he resigned without having fired him, without any specific instruction about his future. So it created a constitutional lacuna that up to today has never been fully resolved legally. But be that as it may, I just wanted to emphasize that that constitutional provision that created the running mate clause was eventually removed in 2021. So it's no longer possible for a vice president to automatically finish off the term of office. So when it was passed in 2021 under Constitutional Bill Amendment number 2, it was the first half of a process of excluding a potential candidate. So where we are with Bill number 3, we are actually in the second half, finishing off the potential candidate succession. Some of you may not be aware, but ZANU-PF is supposed to have its Congress in 2027. And in the context of the Congress, it's supposed to elect a new leader. So the assumption is that that new leader would have then gone to contest in 2028 as the presidential candidate for ZANU-PF. But as things stand, using both Bill number 2 and 3, a process has been initiated to block the possibility of the most natural successor to Emmerson Mnangagwa. So where we are today, as we are about to go through the process of finishing off this bill, we are actually in the deepest end of a ZANU-PF succession battle that seeks to block the vice president, retired General Chiwenga, who is the most natural successor to Mnangagwa. And what is the alternative? There are many theories on the alternative, but for me, the most convincing theory is that we are not only to change the constitution, but we are also going to totally change the succession process in ZANU-PF once and for all. And we're also going to change how we are governed from now onwards. And the most plausible theory is that we are going to have a dynastic kind of leadership. So the plan is then to make sure that our president comes through the family. So if Constitutional Bill number 3 would go to its logical conclusion, it will lay the foundation for what we call the Mafidi dynasty, where Emmerson Mnangagwa will then head his successor, and as things stand, one of his sons is going to be our next president. I have a suspicion that I already know the son who is being groomed to take over the country. So the delay up to 2030 is to continue to groom and prepare that son. It can even be further postponed to 2033, but the bottom line is that according to this process, the next leader of this country is the son of Emmerson Mnangagwa. So this is where we are as a country. The bill is not about Zimbabwe. The bill is not about us as the citizens of the country. The bill is about blocking the vice president. The bill is about laying the foundation of a political dynasty. And those who want to fight the bill should feel free, but we know that the advent of Sengezo Chabang laid the foundation for this bill to sail through. It was just a repeat of a strategy that was used in the 9th Parliament. Some of you are not aware, but after the election in 2023, ZANU-PF did not attain the most crucial 2/3 majority. So Sengezo Chabang is just a bit of what we saw Douglas Monzora and others in the 9th Parliament, just a tool in the election vehicle to pave way for the constitution to be changed. So the parliamentarians were recalled and the parliamentarians were replaced. The main reason was to make sure that ZANU-PF attains 2/3 majority. And under the constitutional amendment bill process of number 3, that is the argument that is being used, that a simple 2/3 majority of parliament is enough to change the constitution in whatever possible way. So ZANU-PF, as we speak tonight, does not have a 2/3 majority. It has a super 2/3 majority, because we have two types of opposition MPs who are going to vote in favor of the bill. There are those parliamentarians who replace those who were recalled. Surely they cannot be expected to bite the finger that fits them. So they are all going to vote in favor of the bill. But also in the last 2-3 years, we've seen some other opposition people who at the end of 2023 would not have been expected to vote for the bill. But in the last 2 to 3 years, they have evolved in terms of their democratic morality. And they are much more inclined to vote for the bill. I can even safely claim that even if ZANU-PF MPs not to vote for the bill will still win, with only CCC members voting for it. So it's in a serious act of self-preservation. So as a parliamentarian, I'm strongly opposed to the bill number 3, even though I know that the parliament is not capable of stopping it because of the super 2/3 majority that is there. But at a personal level, I'm very opposed to it. One, on the basic fact that we cannot expect the same parliamentarians who stand to benefit from the passing of this bill to be the only ones who will have a say on the passing of the bill. In procedural law, administrative law, that's what we call a conflict of interest. Surely in 2023, when I was voted for, I was very clear that it is a 5-year term and it ought to expire in 2028. So there is no way, morally, legally, later on constitutional, that it is possible that in 2026, I'll be asked to vote on a constitutional amendment bill that extends my personal term by 2 more years to 2030. Obviously, that's a penalty without a goalkeeper. So average parliamentarian does not have the moral capacity to stand against that kind of temptation. It's too sweet a temptation. So at the end of the day, the average parliamentarian will choose to promote their self-interest and extend their term. So legally, constitutionally, morally, that is totally unacceptable. My term of office will end in 2028, and I cannot extend it even using this constitutional amendment bill. And I've been very clear to the people of Hwange Central constituency that my term of office will still end in 2028, regardless of the bill, even if it succeeds. Not only that, just want to add that even beyond the fact that the parliamentarians have to vote for this bill, if they were not going to benefit, assuming that their own terms of office were to expire in 2028, the fact that our legitimacy to have a 5-year term is derived from the 2023 August elections means that we have to extend that 5-year term using the same voters who allowed us to have that 5-year term. So to the extent that we can extend our term of office, I think morally, legally, justifiably, it can only be done by the same voters. That's why I'm also recommending that whatever the debate around CAB3 or constitutional bill number 3, at the end of the day, the electorate, the voters, need to be given a public process of engaging the bill to show that they support it or oppose it. So I strongly recommend that there be a referendum process that allows the voters to have their say. Some of you are aware that at the ZANU-PF conference in 2024, the then Secretary for Legal Affairs in the Politburo, Patricia, took a lot of time to explain to conference delegates. For that to happen, we needed 2 separate referendums. One, extend the term of office by 2 more years. 2, to change where it says that the incumbent is not supposed to benefit. So those are the 2 references that he had insisted. If you go on YouTube, you can Google and download the conference that was at Bulawayo. By the time we come last year, both the Legal Affairs Secretary and the Secretary General Opetumpof have been removed and replaced by the Leader of Government Business and Minister of Justice, Legal, Parliamentary Affairs, Ziyambi, and also the Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Mtenda. So these 2 who are strategically positioned to push the bill in Parliament also took off the leadership in ZANU-PF, and this explains why the bill is now in Parliament and is being pushed. They are fast-tracking.
Thank you.
So
Thank
where we
you,
are... Okay, thank you.
Or you can finish your thought, my brother Molekele. We have more opportunity. There's a lot of history here. If you can finish your thought, and we'll move on to Honorable Hlatywayo.
Okay, my last point is that the next question is, so are we powerless to stop what is happening? I think Parliament as a theater of struggle is gone, is captured, so it's useless. But there are 2 options that are still available for us. One, litigation, as others have gone to court. You might be surprised, you might get something out of the court system. Then 2, we need an all-stakeholder strategy where everyone who is opposed to the bill, everyone who is opposed to whatever is happening, whether they are students, youths, women, whatever, trade unionists, civil society, whatever they are, politicians, everyone who is opposed, they come and create an all-stakeholders platform to say, this is not the Zimbabwe we want, this is not the Zimbabwe we want to be part of. So just like in 1996, 97, we gathered ourselves and set up the National Constitutional Assembly as different stakeholders. And by 1999, as different stakeholders, we set up the Movement for Democratic Change. Also in 2007-8, we had the Save Zimbabwe campaign. So now we need to have all stakeholders who are against whatever is happening to say we cannot be held at ransom by ZANU-PF or its succession backers. The Zimbabwe that we aspire to, the Zimbabwe that we want, we are going to unite and confront whatever is happening. That means we have to take the fight to the streets and make sure that we bring the country to a standstill using Section 59 of our national constitution, which gives us the right to protest, to do petitions and so on. So that is the way forward. We need everyone who is opposed to whatever is happening to come together and we start afresh as a country and say no to ZANU-PF, no to ZANU-PF succession backwards entanglement. We want a Zimbabwe that is open and democratic, and whatever is happening to the constitution, we are strongly opposed to it. Any form of mutilation to the constitution, we are against it. And ZANU-PF and all its factions must go. I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Molekele. There's a lot to unpack there. Thank you. A few things that I have noted from your speech, including the fact that citizens are not powerless, and it seems like at this point we are the last stand. And I would also note that we had Constitution Bill number 1, number 2, there was not this much resistance or this much pushback. Something is different about Bill number 3. So anyway, I'll give it to Honorable Hlatywayo, give opening remarks, any questions you can answer, some of the things raised by Honorable Molekele. Thank you so much. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Change Radio. Can you confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Great. Perfect. Privilege and honor, comrades and colleagues, to be part of this platform and to be discussing the topic, which is the topic of, the era, if we can call it that. The question of the constitution is now, a key national, grievance, as it were. And it's important for us as citizens to constantly come together and, unpack what it means for us, but also what we ought to do in order to push back. I feel like just saying, I concur with everything that has been said, because I think my brothers have already unpacked, Doug and Daniel, they've already unpacked what's happening, but I will still say, a few things just to add to their thoughts. I wanted to say, I think we need to understand that a constitution is a social contract between the governed and those that are governing. It's supposed to set the priority, the parameters of how a country is governed. And so those that are governing and those that are governed, they need to agree in terms of those parameters. And that's the process that we did in 2013. And the beauty of 2013 is also that we had an inclusive government. So it was a bipartisan effort. The constitutional agenda was a bipartisan effort where, the major political parties came together and agreed in terms of this social contract, together with the people of Zimbabwe. And it was overwhelmingly voted for by the people of Zimbabwe. The bill that is being proposed now suffers, from both a process and substance or content deficit. If you look at the process that we are currently, conducting in terms of the constitutional process, there are a lot of loopholes. If you look at the manner in which Parliament conducted its bill hearings, it was thoroughly discredited. I, for instance, I attended the Harare, public meeting. I mean, it was a disgrace, a huge disgrace. And to think that, it was actually Parliament that was undertaking this process, I mean, it's disheartening. The whole process was hijacked by ZANU-PF functionaries, even the MPs that were, present at that meeting at City Sports. They were not in charge at all. The process was simply hijacked by, ZANU-PF functionaries. They were the ones who were appointing people who were speaking and everything. And as long as you were not a ZANU-PF person, they were not giving you a mic. I mean, that cannot be happening in a democratic society. And that cannot be happening, during a process that, an institution such as Parliament was undertaking. It was really disheartening. It was embarrassing. And it really shows you that the process of this, the bill process is just, a thoroughly discredited process. Then the second point around the process also, it speaks to the point that Honorable Molekele raised around, the need for not just one referendum, but two referendums. Let me take the opportunity to salute the drafters of the Constitution, because I think they did a good job. They foresaw a situation where we have, politicians who would want to extend their time in office. I still remember, having discussions with people like Magaisa, Alex Magaisa, and him telling us that they have come up with a word clause that was meant to, stop this kind of situations. And in particular in section 328, that says, any change of the term limits must be subjected to a referendum. But beyond that, even if that particular change is okayed by a referendum, if it's to benefit the incumbent, it then needs to go for a second referendum again. And these referendums need to be separate. We can't be bunching them. That's what the Constitution says in terms of section 328. So it really suffers, a huge, huge process deficit. Given the fact that ZANU-PF is not keen on proceeding with a referendum, and neither are they keen on affording an opportunity to citizens to express themselves, as we saw during the public hearings. Then the bill also suffers from a content or substance deficit. And I think my brother Doug, you did an excellent job in terms of unpacking what is being proposed and why, what is being unproposed is untenable. We and Molekele, Honorable Molekele, has also unpacked the internal dynamics within ZANU-PF, and I will not, go into that because I think you've done a fantastic job. But I wanted to add a dimension to say beyond the internal dynamics, There is also the question of actually dealing with the opposition. What is clear, especially, this idea of removing the direct election of the president, it appears ZANU-PF is trying to cure a problem that they have, where over the years, their presidential candidates have not been popular. So, and the argument that they are making that, no elections, we cannot be having elections every time. Elections have been violent and this and that. Who has been causing all of those problems? It's them. They are the ones who have been causing. So the problem is not election. The problem is the way that we have conducted our elections in Zimbabwe. We have conducted our elections not in line with the provisions of the law, not in line with the provisions of our own constitution, not in line with the regional standards, SADC guidelines, governing democratic elections, not in line with the African Charter on democracy, elections, and So that is the problem, and not elections. So what these people are trying to do, they are trying to lock themselves in office as ZANU-PF by, changing the rules and making sure that the rules favors, ZANU-PF. And when you want to see the mischief in terms of how they are trying to lock themselves, you then look into the, proposal to have a delimitation commission, because that is going to be the vehicle for locking themselves in. That is going to be the vehicle for gerrymandering of constituencies. We have seen how, we have had fewer constituencies in areas that are controlled by the opposition, like in towns. And, when you look at rural constituencies, they've been looking at the lowest a threshold in terms of what is provided for in the law. So what it means is that you end up having an MP in the city who is representing, for instance, 30,000 in a constituency, and you have a rural MP who is representing, 20,000, just to make sure that the rural constituencies are many. So that's where the game is going to be played. The drawing of boundaries through this commission is going to determine who wins the presidency. Because once you do the gerrymandering well, that means you have already secured the presidency for your party. So we need to understand this proposal from that perspective. So these arguments to say it's being done elsewhere, it's neither here nor there. The motive is to make sure that ZANU-PF remains in power until, donkeys come home. For me, if there was any constitutional proposal that I was going to support, I've said it in previous, spaces, it was actually a constitutional amendment to change all, the entire electoral system to a proportional representation, where Zimbabwe just becomes one constituency, because it cures the problems around violence, it cures issues of representation of women, of youth, and so on, like the South African system. It becomes, very easy if we go that route. But the moment where we have a mixed system, where the president is through, proportional representation, and the constituencies are through first past the post, we've got a problem, because the constituencies will be gerrymandered, and the presidents will then be secured through those processes. The proposal to transfer, voters' roll to functions to the Registrar General, I'm sure we remember the challenges that we had during the Tobayo days, And we must also take note of the fact that, the function of voters, registration and voters' roll functions are being taken to an office that falls directly under the executive and not an independent commission. So that's where the catch is as well in terms of this proposal. The repeal of the Gender Commission and, lumping the functions or rather transferring the functions to the Human Rights Commission. I think this is totally unacceptable. It is equal to deprioritizing the whole gender question in this country. We have not reached where we want to get in terms of gender equality. If you look at our numbers, even in Parliament, appalling, figures. So therefore, this is just not the time to be doing what we are trying to propose. The question of traditional leaders, and I think Doug, you explained at this point. So the full gamut of CAB3, there is nothing that is positive, absolutely nothing. And it is from that perspective that as citizens, we really need to fight back. We need to push back. We need to make sure that we mobilize, citizen agency to express our disappointment and our disapproval of what the executive and ZANU-PF is proposing. In terms of the way forward, I agree. As I conclude, in terms of the way forward, I agree with Molekele that Parliament is no longer a viable platform, to push our agendas because Parliament has been hijacked. The changes that were done to Parliament was actually meant to weaken Parliament as an institution. And it's unfortunate, even, we don't even know how the process, and maybe Honorable Molekele, you are the lawyer in the space. You can also speak to this. We don't even know how the process is going to, unfold. Because my understanding is that the leadership of Parliament is the one that decides whether it's going to be a secret ballot or, it's going to be a public ballot. And we know that they're going to make it a public ballot just to make sure that, members of ZANU-PF especially, do not get a chance to vote otherwise. And I also concur that democratic resistance, people power, utilizing Section 59 of the Constitution is the only way to go. We need to create a broad platform where Zimbabweans who are against CAB3 come together. This is the time to to come together. Unity is very key. We need to come together. We need to push together so that we can stop CAB3 as it were. So I do not see anything, other than democratic resistance. It is allowed in the Constitution in terms of our Section 59 of the Constitution under the Bill of Rights. And I think as citizens, we need to exercise, that particular right to push back. Otherwise, our country will be set on a very dangerous, trajectory, as it were, and it will be very difficult going forward to then undo, this damage. We fought very hard to be where we are in terms of what we currently have in the Constitution. It was very difficult to convince people like Robert Mugabe, that term limits were the best way to proceed. And we managed to do that in 2013. And I think it is one of our, our key, gains that we got out of the inclusive government. So we need to defend it very jealously and make sure that, the Constitution is preserved is approved in 2013. Thank you so much. I'll stop here.
Oh, thank you so much, Honorable Hlatywayo. I think you are speaking like a citizen. You don't seem to be in Parliament. But anyhow, thank you so much for that insight. And Honorable Molekele and Doug and John, everybody is agreed that citizens are the last port of call, democratic resistance. Every survey we have done at Change News shows that more than 80% of Zimbabweans say the country is moving in the wrong direction. And that is thanks to ZANU-PF, which has been in power for 46 years. So when they're asking for 2 more years, a lot of Zimbabweans are saying no. We'll talk more about saying no. But at this juncture, I will ask my brother Milton to give his opening remarks, 3 to 5 minutes. We still have Honorable Hlatywayo Sibanda. He is particularly talking about the Bulawayo High Court case also. And then we're going to open it up to the floor. So just give us a second so we can get a good, comprehensive idea of what's going on with CAB3, who is doing what are their intentions, or what do they know. So that's why we're taking this time for everyone in the panel to kind of give us an overview of their understanding. It's helping us get a better picture as citizens, because we need that perspective to be clear. My brother Milton, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this very important, thought-provoking conversation. Let me just start by reminding everyone here that we are the last stand for Zimbabwe. We are the voice for the voiceless on the ground in Zimbabwe. Today we are discussing an issue that goes beyond politics. It is about the future of our constitutional democracy and the long-term implications of this proposed bill, CAB number 3. CAB 3 is not just another amendment. It represents a fundamental shift in how power is exercised and controlled in Zimbabwe. One of the most controversial aspects of the proposal is the provision of seeking to extend the terms of office for elected officials without returning to the people for a fresh mandate. At the end of the day, a president is a public servant. In a democratic nation such as Zimbabwe, the voice of the people should be allowed to speak, and the people should be allowed to have a say-so in terms of the leader who is leading our country. The proposal states that the term of office for councillors and members of parliament is extended. We already know that President Mnangagwa has failed Zimbabwe miserably throughout his tenure and continues to do so. He seems to be more interested in lining up his pockets with the likes of Chivayo, Sakupkwanya, Tagwire, and the rest of the Zigananda criminal cabal. Another concern is the proposal linked to delaying electoral processes and synchronizing elections in ways that benefit the ruling party politically rather than strengthening democracy in Zimbabwe. The danger here is simple. When leaders begin changing constitutional rules in ways that prolong political power, weakening electoral accountability and avoid returning to the voters, democracy itself begins the process of erosion. We are now heading toward a dictatorship under the Mnangagwa leadership. Constitutions are meant to limit power, not to make it easier to retain power indefinitely. And obviously, this is what President Mnangagwa is trying to do. And I'm also increasingly concerned about what happens what happens, what appears to be the consolidation of political influence within the Mnangagwa family structure. President Mnangagwa has already positioned his sons and his close relatives in influential business and government linked roles, which raises fears that CAB3 may not only be about extending political control today, but also laying the foundation for a dynasty for his son, for one of his sons to take control of Zimbabwe. I think one of the speakers alluded to this fact. This resembles a long-term chase strategy, placing loyal family influence in pivotal positioning to protect political and economic interests beyond our presidency, thus safeguarding their dubious dealings and looting sprees that are currently going on in Zimbabwe as we speak. The danger with this kind of political culture is that national institutions begin serving individuals and family networks rather than serving the people of Zimbabwe. Under this structure, the citizens are the ones who continue to suffer, not the elite. Merit and transparency and accountability become weakened when power concentrates around a small circle connected to the ruling elite, which is ZANU-PF itself. This proposal must be stopped in its tracks because it will set a dangerous precedent for our country, and not just for today, but for tomorrow and generations to come, and affect generations to come. Zimbabwe's painful history already teaches us what happens when institutions become weaker than political interests. We have witnessed economic collapse, corruption, dilapidated infrastructure, poor healthcare. We don't even have clean running water in Zimbabwe. And the president
my brother Milton, can you lend? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to finish up by saying history is a wonderful memory. History will remember whether we are the generation that took a stand to CAB3, or we are the generation that stood by and let ZANU-PF steamroll back into power once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother Milton, and everyone here on the space. Thank you, and our panelists, thank you so much. We're moving on to the next segment, which is a question and answer session, and I'm handing over to my co-host, Sister Patricia. Sister Patricia, take it up.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you to all the speakers. It's very enlightening when we hear what they have to share, because they are on the ground, they're experiencing this every day. And for those in Parliament, I can imagine what goes on there. And just going back to the point that was made earlier about the one man, one vote, I mean, having this taken away from us is really an emotive process, that we would find ourselves in a situation where we can't vote for those that we want to represent us. And I think it's just totally unacceptable. I know that John had a question earlier on, so I'm going to come to you, John, to ask your questions, and then we'll go around to our speakers. If they have anything else that they wish to add, then we'll open it up for the next 20-25 minutes to people to ask questions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Patricia. Yeah, my question, it wasn't even tongue-in-cheek. It's a serious question. Is the presidency under CAB3, when it goes through, up for sale? And although it's going to have to be a Zimbabwean citizen, is citizenry up for sale as well? Could we see a foreign national as the president of Zimbabwe? Thank you.
Hi, Doug. Did you
Doug,
want to
that's
answer
your
that?
question.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I didn't realize it was directed to me. So not without some changes to the law, but I mean, I don't think it's entirely unrealistic. We do already have citizenship by registration. They could change the. Some countries have these like citizenship, investment citizenship, where you pay a large sum of money to become a citizen. So if something like that were instituted, like the legal framework is, we already have citizenship by registration. So you could have a scenario where someone can get citizenship by paying a huge sum of money, and then sure, like with the electoral architecture that would have been put in place, it's basically the presidency to the highest bidder. So I don't think it's a completely far-fetched scenario. I don't think that's the intention of CAB3. I think that Molekele's analysis on that is spot on, that it's really about creating a dynasty and about ZANU-PF factional politics. But when you entrench kleptocracy into your governance system, and you create a governance system where basically it becomes very easy for dark money, corrupt individuals to capture state power, you could see that happening, and actually, if we see how the whole world is going and the rise of oligarchs even in the West, where billionaires are openly trying to influence government policy, I don't think it's actually far-fetched to say that once we open this door in like another 10 years' time, what now we thought was just about ZANU-PF politics could easily be weaponized in order for our country actually to be captured by by totally foreign interests, by the kind of the billionaire oligarch class globally. And then when you take into account the natural resources that our country has, and the essentiality of those resources for for some of the advancements in tech, especially lithium and rare earth minerals and that sort of thing, we could actually really be opening ourselves up to something way more frightening than I think we are even discussing today. So actually, I hadn't actually thought of that scenario. I had thought of it in terms of being captured by our local Jugananda class. But now that you mention it, I can't see what would really stop a very determined global billionaire from actually just pumping money into capturing an entire country.
Thank you so much for that, Doug. And I have a question to the two sitting MPs. So on the 18th of May, could you please explain what is going to happen? Because we hear about the region, but we are currently there. If you can let us know what would happen. And also, I know the last time that you were here, Honorable Molekele, you talked about that, there are some ZANU-PF MPs that are probably opposed to this, but may be forced to vote for it. What does that look like, and how is it going to feel on the 18th of May? Thank you. And that's to both you and Honorable Hlatywayo.
Okay, let me respond first. But I'll start by going back to John to say that it's possible for someone who is rich to capture the country's presidents, because as things stand, we are now saying that the sitting MPs only need a 2/3 majority vote to change practically any part of the constitution. So if the richest person in the world, maybe Elon Musk, decided to say, I'll give $10 million to each parliamentarian if they change the clauses around citizenship and have a special citizenship for me, I'll immediately give each parliamentarian $10 million in US. I don't think it is going to be hard for that rich person to convince the parliamentarians, because they can go rogue anytime and vote for a change to the constitution by 2/3 majority to automatically grant a special citizenship to a trillionaire. Not only that, to vote for that trillionaire to be the new president of the country, if they are given extra incentives to vote for that person, because they don't need the public anymore. They sit as an electoral college. So if the trillionaire or billionaire says, apart from giving you $10 million each for voting for change of citizenship for me, I also want to be the new president of Zimbabwe. I'll give you an extra $10 million. So each parliamentarian will get $20 million. I'm sure they can be easily convinced. They are willing to sell their souls for such a good price. So Parliament is practically available for auction, for sale. The very idea that parliamentarians can actually agree to change the constitution without anyone being involved is scary for me, because anytime they can convince each other that this whole idea of our term of office ending in 2030 is nonsense. So in 2029, parliamentarians on their own can actually caucus and agree to extend their term of office by another 10 years. And nothing will happen. Because if you take the way the CAB3 is going to its logical conclusion, MPs can extend their stay in parliament as much as they want, the current MPs, so to speak. So if I manage to sweet-tongue all the MPs in 2028 or 20 whatever year and say, let's extend our terms of office by another 12 years, I doubt, because I said to someone, the only logical reason why they are saying they are moving it to 2030 is because they want Emerson Mnangagwa to finish Vision 2030. But from logic, Vision 2030, when it expires, we'll have another vision. Maybe Vision 2040, Vision 2060, 2050. So the argument can then be changed to say that we want Mnangagwa to continue with the new Vision 2040 to 2040. So we should not allow parliamentarians to extend the term of office of anyone, whether a councillor or a mayor or a president or themselves. That is ridiculous. Let me go back. Monday, 18th May, we only have committees. So the parliamentary system is such that the National Assembly sits only on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So if Parliament will be open next week, then the earliest the second reading can be done is on Tuesday, 19th May. I spoke to some parliamentarians yesterday, and there was a rumor that there's been a change of strategy, that the second reading will no longer be done this coming week. It will be done at the start of June. But we'll see what will happen next week if Parliament is open. We can only know that Parliament is open tomorrow evening, because that's when Parliament adjourns on Thursday evening. Then they'll ask to what date. They might say to Tuesday 19th. And then next week we'll see how it goes. Then in terms of the voting procedure, I can confidently claim that secret ballot is not going to happen. It defeats the whole purpose, because secret ballot is very unpredictable. So the most likely option when you're voting for the 2/3 majority will be what we call dividing the house, where they will say those who are saying no, go to the left, and those who are saying yes, go to the right, and there's a head count that is done. So that is clear to everyone who voted for what. And in that context, it's not possible to have a ZANU-PF MP. If it happens, it will be a miracle. But since we should not say anything, nothing is impossible. But those ZANU-PF MPs who are against CAB3, I don't think they have the moral strength to be divided to no. So they'll just vote for yes. In the opposition, it's not going to be hard. I can bet that most MPs will not mind whether it's secret ballot or dividing the House. Most MPs will just vote yes. I heard a rumor, but I will not say it from where, but I heard a rumor that some people are already compiling the list of those who are going to vote yes in the opposition, because someone who has got money has already said we will reward all those who will vote yes with a lump sum. So there's a rumor that each person who will vote yes will get some thank you money. So I'm sure those people who want thank you money will be against secret ballot. I think they are most likely to support dividing the House so that they can prove that they are now due to get some money. So that's where we are at the moment. But people must not forget that what we see at the National Assembly is a product of the processes within ZANU-PF. Because as I've already said, I see the bill as an extension of the ZANU-PF succession pact. So whatever is happening at the National Assembly is informed by the internal dynamics in ZANU-PF, which are beyond the public control. So you will see that whatever is happening within the internal dynamics of ZANU-PF then informs what we see at Parliament with regards to this bill. I'll stop here for now.
Thank you very much for that. And Honorable Hlatywayo, if there's anything that you'd like to share, please go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of the process in Parliament, just to buttress what Honorable Molekele said, the earliest will definitely be Tuesday, but I also know that we are going to be adjourning Parliament for 2 weeks after next week. So next week on Thursday, we are adjourning Parliament for 2 weeks and we'll then come back. And I'm not too sure whether they are going to fast track the process next week after Tuesday, which means they will only have between Tuesday and Thursday to do that. You know, if they want to, they can suspend the rules, because we are normally supposed to be in the House until 7 p.m. max. But as you know, sometimes during the budget process, they can also suspend rules. So that means, sometimes we end up sleeping in Parliament debating. So it remains to be seen. And I think, our approach should always be to be ready from Tuesday, because they can also foot us just to make sure that we are not prepared. So I think the approach is also just to be ready to debate, so that as soon as they put it on the floor, we are, available to debate it. I just wanted to say also, I don't know, one of the things, around litigation, maybe what we should have done also was to approach the courts to force Parliament to do a secret ballot. I don't know, because it would have been good, especially on the side of ZANU-PF. I'm convinced, just from talking to some ZANU-PF MPs, there are those that if it's a secret ballot, they are prepared to vote no. And it might be very difficult for ZANU to get a 2/3 majority. But now with the dynamic that Honorable Molekele, is bringing, that, there are some people who promised, money on the opposition side. A secret ballot will also be dangerous on the opposition side. Because what it means is that, there are certain individuals who can then vote yes, because, they are outside the public eye, as it were, just to make sure that they get those resources. And lastly, I wanted to say there's something that I noticed. I think it was yesterday. There was a post, on X by Nick Mangwana, where he was giving venues for independence celebration. And do you know he gave venues until 2035? And what it shows you the psyche of the regime, that once we let this CAB3 go through, anything can happen. They can change the constitution as and when we get to 2030, they will change it again. So that's the reason why we really need to fight back as citizens and make sure that this doesn't happen. Because if it happens, we are in trouble. We will not be able to stop anything else after that. Assigning venues, that is the role of the executive. And why are they assigning venues to independence celebrations beyond their time? The import of what they are doing is actually to say we are going to be there in 2035. It's still going to be us. So we have got a huge problem, and I just hope everyone else is seeing, what we are all seeing. That a dynasty is in the making, and if we do not do something now, it will be very difficult for us to redeem, this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. We've got a couple of hands up. We've got John and we've also got Milton. And I just wondered if Milton could go first because he's been waiting a while, and then we can come back to you, John. So please go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Change Radio. It was just a question that I wanted to direct to Doug or any of the speakers anyway on the panel. What I wanted to ask is, if CAB3 passes, we know that future generations will inherit a weakened democracy where one man and one vote and constitutional accountability will no longer truly exist in Zimbabwe. And if it does go through, what realistic legal, political, or civic remedies would still exist to overturn or resist this absurd bill? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think there's two things that I would say. One, so yes, the door to electoral transition will be completely closed, but that won't mean that elections are irrelevant. It will, because the parliamentary elections will still be important. It will be important to get, the good members of parliament, like the two who we have present today, who are able to use that platform to, effectively to expose the shenanigans which are going on in Parliament. So that will remain important. But the primary mechanism that we will have, which has always been, I think the main route to democratic transition in Zim, but unfortunately we've been so obsessed with elections that we have never really dedicated the sufficient effort towards this. But it's what we've been talking about all evening. It's through the mechanisms provided to us by Section 59 of the Constitution, the right to peaceful protest, Section 67, which gives us the right to participate, whether individually or collectively, in gatherings and groups to advance any cause. These rights, which provide us with the legal foundation for mass nonviolent action, is what has brought a democracy to authoritarian states all around the world. It's how the Congolese defeated Kabila's attempt to extend his term in 2016. It's how the Malawians and the Zambians defeated attempts to extend terms in their countries. So we even have precedent within our region. And if you look further around the world, there are many examples where deeply entrenched dictatorships, there has been a transition to democracy through nonviolent action. So that will remain the primary mechanism democratic transition. And I think that's why I say we need to carry the momentum through from this renewed resistance to CAB3, which we have seen, needs to carry through in the very dark days ahead, if CAB3 does pass. While I have the mic, I will just mention that to the points that Honorable Hlatywayo was making about the vote. Unfortunately, our Court has already ruled that in a previous case that the courts won't force Parliament to do a secret ballot. The only circumstances where Parliament has to do a secret ballot is on the Speaker of Parliament. But the courts won't direct Parliament to do a secret ballot, even though they really ought to on a matter like this. Unfortunately, the courts have already ruled on that. However, the important thing to note with a constitutional bill is that it has to be 2/3 of the total membership of both houses. So it's not just 2/3 of those who are present on the day, but 2/3 of the total membership of the House. So that means if anyone doesn't pitch up on the day, that's as good a vote as a no. So anyone who is too scared to vote no, but wants to do right by their conscience, all they simply have to do is not be available on the day for any number of reasons, and that would be as good a vote as no. Of course, for those like Honorable Molekele and Honorable Hlatywayo who have been open and vocal against the bill, we would rather have you there so that you can debate it. But for for those who don't have the courage that the two of you have, but do still want to do right by the people of Zimbabwe, the simple and easiest way for them to do right by the people of Zimbabwe would just be to not show up on the day of the vote, and that will be effectively a no vote for the bill.
Thank you so much for that. I think that does make sense, doesn't it? They just abstain, or whatever the term is used in Parliament. Otherwise, we're just headed for a period of uncertainty and chaos in our country, bearing in mind that the country is not really developing. There are no jobs being created, and the human rights violations are on the increase as always. So it's important that we can all do whatever we can to fight. I think the fear is for people that are on the ground, it's hard for them to do the marches because we know what always happens. The army come out, they shoot at people, but in the diaspora, we can continue to raise our voices. John, please do go ahead.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, I mean, this all raises around the question of sovereignty of Zimbabwe, which really rests with the population, not with the regime. I may see. I wasn't thinking of Elon Musk. I was thinking of the Chinese creating a new subsidiary country, if you like, full of minerals that they need, and Sean going out with a blaze of glory with a few $1 billion. That was one of the things I saw. But the other question I have is, my background is in civil engineering and construction, and I look at Zimbabwe and see an utter and complete failure for the last 46 years. There has been no proper building, no construction, no development, no progress. It's all been negative. It's been destruction and destroying things, breaking things down, demolishing buildings. It breaks my heart with my background to look at what is going on. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, really. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, John. I think we've got a question from Maduve. If you are going to speak, please, a couple of minutes, because we've only got about 12 minutes left, and we want to leave the last 10 minutes to give the speakers another roundup for them to do their closing remarks. There's also Owen, Owen Chari. I can't remember who came first now. Sorry. I apologize. So if we can go with Maduve, then Owen Chari, and then there's Rue. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope my network is I hope you guys can hear me. I have
We can hear you.
like two short questions. My question is we have three arenas in my mind of resistance, like 3 areas where we can go. So my question, I guess, is which one would be the most effective and which one can be put in place quicker and easier than others? Because the one option I think would be to protest against the MPs, where citizens take enough initiatives to drive their MPs to actually take a stand. Because at the moment, nobody knows where their MPs stand. And with what Honorable Molekele said, they have been given like he said, most of them are not really, what can we say, elected by the people. But then they still carry our mandate, and it would be important for us to take it back. So would it be to go for the MPs? The second option would be, okay, to go for the concourse, and I'll explain in a second how. And then the third option would be protests on the streets, which would be a little bit harder to get. On the Concord thing, I had thought about it earlier that it would be important for, if any cases to be heard, citizens come out and actually sit outside the court and demand that the court makes a decision based on what the people say. And it's something like, because the Constitution is written by us, for us, and ultimately we are the Constitution ahead of the paper that is written down. So when you say to the Constitutional Court, I think we've discussed this in other spaces, and there's a lady, Umasi, she's not here, she says it better. If we are outside that court and say, this is our document, we are the ones, and we are here to say what that document says. But then it comes to my other question. None of the cases have been heard, or this is what I believe. And since the reading is starting, is there a risk that none of these cases will be heard until after the reading and after the vote, and basically rendering the whole thing ineffective? So I guess my question is, which is the easiest arena to fight, and how can people be encouraged to take up that one that, as you guys are on the ground, you understand that people will take? Thank you. I hope I made sense. Thank you.
Should we answer like now or?
Yes, please do go ahead and
Okay.
answer. Thank you.
Yeah, you raised important questions. And I think for me, it's the options that you give are not really mutually exclusive. I think we need a multiplicity of strategies, a multi-pronged approach, because you never know what is going to work. I know the lawyers, still have faith in the, court processes. I'm a political scientist by training. I do not believe that the courts as currently constituted can do anything. I know that, there are internal ZANU dynamics, and so people will be hoping that maybe there are some who are on the bench that, supports, the other side of ZANU and so on. But, from a political science perspective, given what we have seen over the years, I do not think that we can get joy from the courts, although I still think it's still important to approach the courts because we are also doing it for posterity. So For me, it's not about choosing from the options that you give. It's actually, if we can even get more options to put in there, maybe international advocacy, regional advocacy, or whatever, let's put as many strategies as we can and make sure that we do all we can as citizens to try and stop this evil bill, if I can call it that. I think that would be my response to your question.
Okay. Can I also come through? I remember that in South Africa, I used to fight with fellow Zimbabweans. We used to say, no, it's easy to demonstrate here in South Africa, but in Zimbabwe, it's hard to demonstrate and so on. So I said to those people, where South Africa is, especially in line with the 1996 Constitution, these are the gains of decades of struggle. So they are reaping what they sowed. So you as a Zimbabwean are here in South Africa today because there was a lot of sacrifice, including the fact that there were people at Robben Island, there were people like Nelson Mandela spending 27 years in jail. The freedom that South Africa enjoys today is not an accident of history, it's a product of history. So Zimbabweans must understand that for ZANU-PF to be in government, it's not an accident of history. It's a product of history. Some people were at Chimoyo, some people were at Nyatsonya, some people at Solwes, Tanzania, Mozambique, Zambia, and so on. Sacrifice their personal career, sacrifice their lives to move ZANU-PF to where it is today. So nothing is for free in life. If Zimbabwe is going to have a democratic breakthrough, there has to be a process of engaging the system in public. We can't assume that it will happen accidentally. If we don't do anything about it, ZANU-PF will continue to be in power until Jesus comes. So the apartheid state was much more brutal than ZANU-PF can ever be. But it was eventually dismantled. So that's the message that I want to give, that wherever we are with Zimbabwe today, it's a product of us as Zimbabweans. When I left South Africa to return to Zimbabwe, that was the message that was driving me, because I noticed that every year we're increasing the number of Zimbabweans in South Africa. But the source of the problem is in Zimbabwe. So Zimbabweans will leave the country and coming to South Africa. And every year, the rate of xenophobia in South Africa was increasing against Zimbabweans. But the practical solution is not in South Africa, it's in Zimbabwe. Once Zimbabwe fights and gains its democratic benefits like South Africa, then there will be no need for Zimbabweans to leave Zimbabwe and flood South Africa. So the country that we have that God gave us is Zimbabwe. I could have been born anywhere else. Genetically, I'm more likely I could have been born in South Africa more than in Zimbabwe, because if you trace my genes, I'm far more South African than I can ever imagine. But I wasn't born in South Africa. I was born in Zimbabwe. So God has a purpose of me being born in Zimbabwe. This is the only country that I have. I can become a South African citizen anytime I want. It's just by choice that I'm not a South African citizen. But what about the country that God gave me, the country of my birth, my beautiful motherland? So for me, there is only one option on the table. We have to invoke Section 59 of our national constitution, which gives us the right to demonstrate, to petition. We need Zimbabweans on the streets. We need Zimbabweans confronting the regime. There will be a lot of sacrifice involved, but the bottom line is, at the end of that process, Zimbabwe will transition democratically to a better country. If we continue to live the country like we've been doing, going to other people's countries, We will never move Zimbabwe forward. We will continue to have a Zimbabwe getting worse. If all the Zimbabweans stand up to this regime with its all bully tactics, it will run away. It will collapse. So that's I'm answering you, Matube. The only option on the table is Section 59. Zimbabweans must go to the streets. They don't need a political party. They don't need a political leader. They must just get into the streets. How do they do it? That cannot be discussed online. But that is the message that needs to be sent to people. Take charge of your country. This is your country. It doesn't belong to ZANU-PF. It doesn't belong to a politician. It belongs to the people of Zimbabwe and the future generations of Zimbabwe.
Honorable Molekele, I think my question is misunderstood. I am saying we need to invoke Section 59. And I'm saying we have 3 arenas in which to invoke it. To invoke it with Parliament and the parliamentarians, to invoke it with the Constitutional Court, or to invoke it. This one is a given. It would be great to invoke it on the streets. So I'm saying we have 3 arenas where we can, and we can use all those 3. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. We can use all those 3. Section 59, our parliamentarians. Section 59, our Constitutional Court, and Section 59, all those areas that are involved in this.
Yeah, I think Honorable Hlatywayo has already responded to that. All options are available, they can be used. But I'm saying my option as a citizen of this country, the only option on the table, if you ask my personal view, as a citizen of Zimbabwe, there is only one option on the table. Because the courts are captured, Parliament is captured, the media is captured. The only thing that is not kept is the individual country. A step up up to Ian Smith and front regime with all in government. So that is that it's not an accident. ANC did that with the upper state today in government. So expect things to happen automatically. I personally prefer that Zimbabwe stand up to the government. That's what I prefer. Using Parliament, those who want to use Parliament can feel free. We're going to be us. The way I understand parliamentarians, they can even change numbers today. Before the parliamentarian will not be reachable. It takes $1 your SIM. You can have a number today. If you feel you are being overwhelmed, you can avoid public easily. You have a number by tomorrow. So, a practical idea. Something that has not been said tonight is the whipping system. People want to assume that parliamentarians are individuals. That is not true. That's a lie.
Thank you. Is he still speaking?
It appears, he has lost his reception.
Oh, okay. I don't know if people can
I
hear
wanted
me.
to say, maybe whilst he's still coming back, I wanted to say, where I agree with Honorable Molekele is that everything else will not work as long as it is not, as long as the option of Section 59 is not pursued. Because even the bench can be forced to make certain decisions if citizens come out in their number and say, this will not accept. Institutions can then be forced to conform to what the people want. But I don't think it will be, strategy to pursue the other options without Section 59. I mean, we will not get anything out of it. Section 59 remains the central strategy. People power, democratic resistance, people getting out and speaking to say this is enough. I think for me, it's key. That's where I agree with Honorable. We can still do everything else, but if we do not do, if citizens do not demonstrate and petition, then we will not get anything out of it. Citizens can actually force institutions to do what they are supposed to when they see that citizens are resolute. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Can people hear me?
Drop off the.
Sorry.
That was me. I was just saying I can hear you, but I'm going to need to drop off. But thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Doug. We really appreciate you. Thank you for everything that you've shared, and we're following your work, and we'll continue to retweet and to reshare. Thank you so much.
Please, drops. I have an illegal question that I want to ask. So that's why I raised up my hand.
Could you go on, please? Is it for a minute so that we can release him? Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to make a presentation first, but then later to the question and we don't go to a referendum and then they choose the parliament to do it on behalf of Zimbabweans. How legal is the process?
Yeah, it's completely illegal. The constitution is absolutely that from an extension to the term, and that if you want to change that rule, it has to go to a referendum. So if they don't take it to a referendum, it will be 100% illegal, regardless of what anyone says. It means that that come August 2028, we will have an illegitimate government. Of course, there's an argument to be made that that government is already illegitimate, but I think from a legal point of view, that we do not have legitimate government is completely unlawful.
So, since this process is illegal, and all of us, we are concentrated on trying to defend something that is illegal, and we are not preparing for a referendum, maybe ZANU-PF is going to realize that this thing is illegal and they're going to give you a referendum.
It's possible.
Yeah, how much prepared are we for a referendum? Because I've not seen many spaces talking and preparing the citizens for a referendum that is supposed to take place, because that's a legal way. And we know that ZANU-PF have got legal people who knows that it is illegal. They might want to do it legally and give you a referendum. Yet Zimbabweans don't think they're prepared for a referendum so far.
Yes, and I think that has been part of the strategy. I think that I do think that it is still possible that we might go for a referendum. I think it's possible that the courts might force the regime to go to a referendum, as much as our the independence of our judiciary has been compromised. As Professor Maduku put very, very well, there's even a captured court has a minimum. And the constitution is so categorically clear that this has to go to a referendum, that even a compromised court might not be willing to go, to sort of prostitute itself to such an extent of allowing them to get away with such a brazen illegality. And so, yes, we might go for a referendum. And I think that it's partly been ZANU-PF strategy to cause this confusion around referendums so that people don't prepare, and also to ensure that anyone who could be organizing for a referendum would be facing pending charges or in custody. I'm sure you saw that students were arrested today. I think that if we do go for a referendum, there will likely be even more arrests, and anyone who would be organizing against that referendum will essentially not have any space to organize or would be arrested and in custody. We've already seen that in terms of the arrest of Tendai Biti and that he is facing, the assault of Professor Maduku and others. And so, yeah, I think that is a possible scenario which we need to prepare for. Yeah, don't think they can to try to avoid it, but because of how clear cut the position is, forced to.
Can also, Doug, you raise a very important question, and it's one that I've been telling colleagues that we need to prepare for a referendum, because I think, Doug, that the courts can give that ruling not because they've got a bare minimum. In Zimbabwe, I do not believe that, but they can do it because they've actually been directed by the executive. A referendum. That's the reason why we need to raise the quality of our argument, that we are not just in a referendum, we are demanding a free and fair referendum where citizens are allowed to discuss and express their views. Been conducted, and they can be beaten up, abducted, and whatever. That is calling fair, legitimate referendum. So I think we need to tweak our messaging around our calls for a referendum, but also make sure that, in terms of our ground game, we start actually, mobilizing the people in preparation. The reason why I'm saying the regime has been ready for perhaps not ready, maybe ready is not the word, but it has been budgeting for a referendum. If you see the show that they put up for the public hearings, the kind of resources that they are putting in, with the jingles on the radios, with the T-shirts and everything, you can see that there is something that they are preparing for. It was not just for the public hearings. So I think as the democratic contingent, we need to get our act together, and make sure that even if they foot us, we are ready, to go out and mobilize people, to vote.
I have a quick question. I'm so sorry. You said in your earlier submission the referendum is flawed in its content and in its procedure. So is there no option for citizens just saying, no, this thing was not done properly, and the contents of it don't work? So throw the whole thing out and then come back. And then, sorry, I have a question from my inbox from Scotty. My inbox won't open. It says, if the government ignores public submission and pushes CAB3 through Parliament anyway, what are the legal or democratic options that citizens will have to challenge this? Thank you. So it's those two. If it's flawed, then why should a flawed thing keep being debated? Can't the focus be throw the whole thing out, start again, come back, and I don't know.
Do you want me to take that one? Yeah, look, I mean, the thing, if we had a responsible government and a responsible parliament, it would be. and go back to the drawing board. But the reality is that it's these institutions that are controlling the process. So you can't expect a rational response from an institution that is interested in sort of discussing these things. Legal mechanism that we have to respond to all of these things is Section 59. That even once the bill is passed, even if it's passed and it's signed into law by the president, there can still be litigation, and it could still be struck down court. Many people forget that Amendment number 1 was actually struck down by the Constitutional Court because MP failed to number 1, and then the court directed that it goes back. So so that those legal processes will play out, but as has rightly been pointed out, in a society where all of our institutions by an authoritarian regime for many decades, that our primary to actually achieve that vision.
Sorry, I just wanted to come through on the issue of the referendum to say that we should not make an assumption that ZANU-PF is united. Because they know, as it has been said, it can even be directed that it be done on the assumption that it can be rigged, just like other elections we have had. But the real reason why we have not had a referendum, despite the public recommendation that Patrick Chinamasa did at Bulawayo, is because it's too risky for that particular faction. So that's the only reason.
Honorable Molekele, you raise an important point that, it's not that they don't know that they can rig it, but what they are more afraid is that there is a half that is not in support and they can sabotage. If you still remember, in 2008, there was an argument that the reason why Morgan Changirai was able to garner, the votes that he got, or rather, the allocation that he was given by the Electoral Commission, was because of Boram Sanko. So whenever the regime apparatus is not unified, it doesn't have a unified position, it becomes easy for them not for certain actors not to play their role in terms of the rigging machinery. So I would argue that the reason why they are not maybe too keen on proceeding with a referendum is because of the internal discohesion within ZANU, and not necessarily because they know that the citizens don't want it, because they can still rig it.
Okay. So, Patricia, can I just finish off my part?
Hello, Owen.
Hi.
Just 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry. I think we have had a very great conversation, and obviously everything great needs to come to an end. I hope that's not the end of Zimbabwe. We will have more opportunity to talk. So, what I would ask our panelists is to give us their closing remarks, 1 to 2 minutes. So, Chari, I know you had something burning to say.
I think
in 1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah, but then
and then
this follow-up
we move
was
on
going
to. I'm sorry, Owen. You were saying something.
Oh, I was saying the follow-up was going to help in with the question. That's why I asked if I was going to ask the question or make a small presentation, because this is the much important part.
Unfortunately, because of our time,
okay.
we have to wind down because, this is like almost 11 o'clock in Zimbabwe, and we'll have more opportunity. I'm sorry about that. So if you can just give us your statement or question, whichever you decide to do, 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay,
so
fine.
from you, we go to Madue,
okay,
we go to Kajao,
okay,
and then we'll have the rest of the panelists. Thank you.
Okay, so quickly, I've realized that we have to establish the willingness of the citizens to participate in this protecting their constitution or in this whole processes. Do our citizens have the sense of ownership to what is going on? Where are they? Where are they standing, or are they just? Patricia, I think your mic is open. Okay. So if we don't have willingness of the citizen to participate, it is going to be very difficult for us to revoke Section 159. And also, what is the link between the MPs and the constituencies? We need to also establish that and help those MPs that we think are wrong. We need to have arrangements to have point people so that we can go and bypass the MPs and organize in their constituencies, so that if they sell out, if they do against the will of the people, we have the people from that constituencies who are willing to take part and defend the constitution. And the other last thing is, I'm just cutting things through so that I do it quickly. My last part is, we need to encourage Zimbabweans not to participate in politics or struggles because they want a paycheck. When people went to a liberation war, they did not go there for a paycheck. So we need to recruit and have new people or people who do not want to be paid for participating in these processes and also defending Zimbabwe. Thank you so much. That's what I can say in brief. Sorry, I was rushing through.
Oh, no problem, my brother Owen. We'll have more discussions. I know there's a lot to say, but we'll save it for next time. Madue, please, your closing remark, 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Owen raises a very important point, because the MPs are not particularly under the protection of ZANU-PF. They are beneficiaries of ZANU-PF. So they are easy losses for ZANU-PF. So they are an easy avenue for us to petition and to see that they are whipped into line. Because when we talk about the whipping system, maybe they need to be whipped by citizens. And then the second thing is, I think the referendum, like everyone says, is a dangerous thing. It can go either way. But it's something that's important to ask for. But I think what's even better to ask for is to say, this bill is flawed procedurally and in content, and therefore when you exercise your Section 59, you're not exercising it for a referendum, you're exercising it for the bill to get thrown out. Because when you exercise your right for something that's already not right, then maybe you are putting yourself in a corner where someone can get away with something else. So if we are to exercise Section 59, I believe it should be to say the whole thing must go. And I hope you guys can come back when there's more time on a weekend. Very interesting discussion and insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insights and your contribution. My brother John, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I must congratulate everybody on this spaces for the rich content that we've had this evening. There are several areas that I will subtly change our petition to incorporate, particularly on, fear in having open demonstrations in Zimbabwe, and that has been engineered by ZANU-PF for quite some time to make sure that these sorts of demonstrations are kept to a minimum with the police and the army and everything that goes with it. But that is the way ahead, realistically, within Zimbabwe. Interesting to hear that ZANU-PF are not united. Again, I will expand upon that within our petition. So let's just quickly reading through my notes here. Yeah, I mean, Doug's content in terms of the legalities has been really interesting. The Gladys and Daniel's input has been really interesting. Daniel, particularly the history, has been riveting, from my perspective as a complete novice student to Zimbabwean situation. So all of this will be, I'll be taking notes from the transcript and incorporating those into the written petition to go to our own incompetent, ineffective government. But all aspects of it, our lords seem to be the most receptive, I must add, receptive element of our own government at this moment in time. The Lord Collins has completely sold out for lithium, and I'm really more than disappointed with that. But the Lords, there is a group within the Lords who are particularly receptive, and I'll be aiming our petition particularly at them and in trying to embarrass the Foreign Office into listening to them as well. So thank you everyone who's been on tonight. It's been really an eye-opener, or an ear-opener, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you for those remarks. My brother, Honorable Daniel Molekele, your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just 1 or 2 points. I think the first one is in the whole confusion that is happening around the bill, do not lose sight of Chiwenga, because the bill is about Chiwenga at the end of the day. That's what it's all about. It's about stopping Chiwenga. And some of you don't know that he has actually come back from the dead, even though for him to rise, he had to come all the way from China, where he spent a year and came back alive after almost dying in South Africa. Watch that man, because he knows he's supposed to be the next president of the country. So he's not going to just roll over. Watch that man. Then the second issue is around the people of Zimbabwe. Whether it's the 2000 elections, whether it's the 2002 elections, whether it's the 2018 elections, 2023 elections, all these elections were rigged. So we have a crisis of legitimacy in this country. We have the people of Zimbabwe voting. Even in 2008, Morgan Tsvangirai won overwhelmingly, but the electoral system is predetermined. So unless and until we realize as Zimbabweans that we are being held at ransom by a faction of Zimbabweans, a small group of Zimbabweans who are deciding our fate, then we are not yet there. Because that's where our political maturity has to come through. my experience with South Africa and living in South Africa was that South Africans have learned from the previous apartheid state, because today in South Africa, even for service delivery issues, there are protests. Citizens in South Africa are speaking out. They want to go back to where they're coming from. So Zimbabweans can learn from South Africans to say no, to refuse to accept nonsense. So the right to protest, the right to demonstrate in South Africa is executed religiously. It came at a price, a lot of people died, but now they insist on it. So we as Zimbabweans, we must learn from them, that we must take charge. And the best way to do it is to allow ourselves to a stage where we can actually get into the streets again. Once we get into the streets, the political dynamics change. Even the role of the army changes if people are on the streets. Our most recent transition outside elections happened in Madagascar last year. And the only reason why Madagascar changed their president is because the people of Madagascar found themselves on the streets. And before we knew it, without an election, the president of Madagascar had to step down or leave the country or flee the country, while they were supposed to be the SADC chairperson. So that last year, SADC did not have a chairperson because they were removed by the army. But I just wanted to encourage every Zimbabwean to say that as long as we are not willing to sacrifice, we cannot expect any change. We will not reap what we have not sown. Everyone who is around me is asking me, is it worth it, the sacrifice you have done to yourself, to your wife, to your child, to your family, to your income, to everything? I can never claim that it's justifiable, but I can claim that it could be worth it in the long term, because if Zimbabweans do what I'm doing, then we might have hope to change the country's direction. Because everyone is giving the same excuse. I've got children, I've got a business, I've got a family, I've got what. So at the end of the day, no one is willing to take the next step to sacrifice themselves. Are you willing to be arrested? Are you willing to go into detention? Are you willing to lose money? Are you willing to lose your family, your job? Are you even willing to lose your life? If you are not willing to do these things, then Zimbabwe will not move. It will remain where it is or go backwards. So where we are today is because Zimbabweans are not standing up to the system. Because if they did, Zimbabwe would take a different direction. When I was at the University of Zimbabwe, one of the things I remember doing distinctly would be to say, if you don't speak out, then no one will know that what's happening. So then you have to make sure you don't sleep at night, mobilizing people. Wake up early in the morning. You would find me at 5 a.m. already at Baghdad, knocking and mobilizing the first years. From there, we march. Nasi kune demo baba. And we are good to go. By the time the Vice Chancellor, Professor Graham Hill, arrives, we have taken over the direction of the day. And everyone says there is no lectures today. So we did the demonstration in June 1998 that says Mugabe must go. And at that time, I was the president at the UZ. And I remember saying to the students, we are no longer doing it for ourselves, because we had seen it in Indonesia with the students with Suharto. When they closed that university for a year, it's because the president of the students gave a speech to say that this is no longer a demonstration about payout. This is a demonstration about changing the direction of the country. We are going to camp at Parliament until Mugabe is removed. That's why the University of Zimbabwe in 1998 was closed for a year. It was closed because, as the president, I said, the direction has changed. We want Mugabe to go now in June 1998. And we slept outside Parliament on 1 June 1998. And we said we want all students to gather at Parliament and the rest of citizens to gather so that we can say Mugabe must go. Can you imagine if Mugabe had gone in 1998? Maybe the direction of the country would have gone in a better way. So that is the message I'm giving to everyone. Zimbabweans, you are the masters of your own destiny. After you finished going to America, going to South Africa, to Botswana, to UK, to Australia, New Zealand, your country remains under people like I would want to mention names, but under people like Wicknell, under people like so on, the Ghanaian people. Zimbabwe remains, your country that you claim is yours, is in the hands of those kind of people. Is that something you'll accept? Your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will ask you, what did you do about it? Because these guys are very cruel, they are very selfish, they are very greedy, they are very corrupt, and they don't care about the future of the country. They are living in the now. And they are looting this country. What will our third and fourth generations inherit from us? A totally bankrupt Zimbabwe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Molekele. Now to Honorable Hlatywayo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Change Radio. I will be very quick. Fellow citizens, I think we have agreed that we are at crossroads and decisive action is required. I just want to emphasize two things. Number one, there's a quote that was that came from Frederick Douglass in 1857, and he said, and he was a slave trade abolitionist, and he said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. What we are saying, or what he was saying essentially, was that freedom will never come on a silver platter. So we must know as citizens that we need to, act upon our convictions. Discussing is good. It will give us courage. It will mobilize, it will, give us, clarity of thought in terms of what we want to do. But beyond discussions, I think it's important for us to act on our convictions. Section 59, the right to demonstrate and petition, remains the only option that we have as citizens to free ourselves from the massive authoritarian consolidation that we find ourselves in. So let's occupy the streets as citizens. Number two, it appears a broad-based coalition to fight back remains the only viable vehicle to fighting, the challenges that we find ourselves in. And, I need to say, and Honorable Molekele kept on referring to the internal dynamics in ZANU-PF. And I think history has also taught us, if you look at, the transitions, whether from Latin America, African countries and so on, you would see that the transitions to democracy were also enabled by this elite discohesion that we are talking about. So I think the democratic contingent must also, be ready within the framework of this broad coalition to also work with certain elements, from the system to make sure that we quicken the process of, a transition to democracy. I think history has taught us that, that's the only way that, a transition, a true transition to a democratic society can be achieved. You need to have that broad-based coalition that also, encompasses some elements from the system, so that at least our vision of a democratic Zimbabwe is realized. Otherwise, thank you so much to Change Radio. This has been a very interesting discussion. I hope you will continue to convene these spaces where we share ideas, so that we find lasting solutions for our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Hlatywayo, and everybody who has been on the space. You will all agree with me that this has been very enlightening. Thank you for our panelists, Honorable Molekele, John with Zoro, course, Honorable Hlatywayo, Doug Coulthard, who had to leave earlier, and everybody who contributed here today. This has been a very, very enriching space for many reasons. Sometimes we work on assumptions, sometimes we work on speculation, but we had here the wisdom of the crowd, where we get to hear from Zimbabweans, some with inside knowledge of what's going on in Parliament, some with inside knowledge of what's going on amongst citizens. One thing that we can all conclude is that the buck now stops with the citizens. I think that message is clear, and we need to find courage wherever we can find that courage. If it's through prayer, please, this is the time to pray for Zimbabwe. If it's through motivational speeches, this is the time to do it, and it rests on every Zimbabwean to do something. One campaign, I've seen a number of campaigns online, including Zimbabwe Says No. It's a hashtag, Zim Says No. Please, whenever you're talking CAB3, use those hashtags so that we are larger in numbers and we can speak and we can find the courage. And I hope that the coalition that is talked about comes to fruition, meaning it's a coalition of minds, coalition of citizens, we the citizens, coming together and saying this and no further. And this is very special, this particular bill. We have had so many bills, but this one, every Zimbabwean is paying attention because we ought to be paying attention. So I say that we have work to do. The work is not going to be finished tomorrow or even on Monday. It's going to take much more, but it will take all of us to succeed. So with those remarks, I hand over to my co-host, Sister Patricia, who has done an excellent job keeping us here, keeping us engaged. And thank you to Change Radio for these spaces and everybody else who has sacrificed their time and effort to be here. Thank you, Sister Patricia.
Thank you so much again to Change Radio and to my co-host, Dr. Ranga, and to all the amazing speakers for taking the time out. We've been here for nearly 3 hours now. So thank you so much, Doug Coulthard. Thank you, Honorable Hlatywayo. Thank you so much for coming and for just standing with Zimbabweans. It is so encouraging when we see you who are down in Zimbabwe. We feel so encouraged to do more here in the diaspora. Honorable Molekele, thank you so much. It is because of you that we see on the ground that causes us to organize this protest, to want to be on the ground here in the UK, to John Burke, who's been working within the Zimbabwean community, supporting us Zimbabweans. He's never been to Zimbabwe, John. I think you need to go to Zimbabwe once things are, when we get to normal, you do need to visit the country, but he's there with us and it encourages us so much. And to all the speakers and to RAW. So RAW didn't come. So these are the organizers of the protest that is taking place on the 15th of May, including Women of Zimbabwe, who are a charity that advocates for women's safety and equality for women. There's also ZAPU. They were not able to come. And there's some great individuals that work alongside us to make sure that we're keeping up the pressure, we are amplifying the messages on the ground, and that we want change. I think that's the biggest thing. We all want change in Zimbabwe. I want to come home to Zimbabwe. I want to live in Zimbabwe. I no longer want to be here, but I feel some sort of trap. My mind is not in the right place to be down on the ground in Zimbabwe. I can visit, but living there, I still am not confident to do that. To all of our other speakers, Rue, Owen, Milton, who else is there? Maduve, thank you so much. We can't take any more questions from yourselves, but we've got Barbara, who's part of Change Radio. I don't know if you wanted to say something quickly for 2 minutes, and then the space will close. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. So over to you, Barbara.
Barbara seems to have dropped my sister Patricia. She's not
she's dropped. Okay, list. Yeah. That's lovely. That's lovely. Shall we go out with the song that Honorable Molekele? What was that song you were singing? Zimbabwe Day Europa. Is that what you were singing?
Oh, I wish we
I do
had
want
it, you know, Tisukama, Taiwama, you know, whatever we were doing on campus.
or
It was
something,
it was
whatever you were.
a student union version.
Yeah, what
Nasi
was it?
kune demo baba, nasi
Nasi
kune
Demo,
demo
demo,
Mari,
Nasi
chombo ndiudze
demo,
o chombo, chombo ndiudze o kwaenda
and
Mari,
Mari,
chombo ndiudze o
Zeo,
chombo. Saka so the
Zeo,
students
Baka, and
singing.
Mari.
Yeah,
And
but
then
Constitution.
when the university was closed, the song that was the most popular song, it still is not, it's a very interesting song. The song used to say, Moro adi maya, Moro adi moro. So the first years, the Ubers, they loved that song because they would just say, Moro adi maya, Moro. They will come, Moro. They will be using the vulgar word for Moro. That's why I like the song. When you listen, what are these boys saying? Like saying the vulgar word for Moro. Akanyera tsamba isakero adi
We might
Moro.
skip here, actually.
They are children on this platform.
We might skip here with Honorable Molekele.
I know.
One
I
thing
think we
that
need
I
to go.
forgot to say. One thing that I forgot to say is I also share the same history with Honorable Molekele in terms of student activism.
Okay.
So I can relate with all of the songs, that he's singing.
Oh, that's lovely. Maybe next time we can learn properly and sing together.
Sure, Sister Patricia, I was gonna suggest if Change Radio is the song, the national anthem, CAB3. Makore maviri moda ei mamwe. You know, if we had it, yeah, Hezekiah. I think it's a very telling song lately.
Yeah, I think next time we'll have it play, and then we can have more fun next time. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye bye, and God bless.
Good night.
Bye. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.